So when we're asked, how much is it going to cost me to get into Azure? That's one thing, but the running costs of Azure are also quite hard to fathom and understand and model for you. So we like to walk through these 6 steps with some of the modeling for customers. So we start with that initial deployment, and this is very much if we lift and shift what you've got in your data center to Azure. This will never happen. I'm never going to move your data center, shove it into the back of a lorry, drive it to UK South data center, chuck it in there. There you go. You're in Azure. Off you go. That's designed for capacity. You've got a finite amount of capacity in your data center. You've got 13 ESXi hosts. They've all got 16 processors, 100 and whatever gig of RAM. You've got a finite amount of capacity until you can buy more. So you carve that capacity up into allocation. So this server, I've got 400 processors. This server is an SQL server, it's production. Okay, I'm going to give it 8 processors. That's what I'm licensed to. It's not a utilization requirement, it's a capacity requirement. You're carving things up based on what you think the application needs and what you've got at your disposal. So the first flip we do is going from capacity to utilization. The ARC results, the scanning results will say, well, this server is consuming this amount of resource. It needs this. So give me this. It could be underutilized, it could be overutilized. So it's not always a downsizing exercise. It could be an upsizing component as well. So to say, look, you give me 4 processes, I need 8. Come on, I'm working really hard here. I've got a bottleneck. Release this bottleneck and you're going to get a more performant server. And it's that performance cost analysis that we will do at this point to make sure we've right sized at this stage some of the services and flip that from capacity to utilization. I think this animates, Liam, so you just want to click next one. Yeah, my animation skills are amazing. So we then take that right size model and start stripping some of the services out that we're going to be using as the replace are. So, okay, well, if I'm not going to move my file servers, I'm going to just adopt SharePoint. Brilliant. Let's start consolidating the file estate. Not everything's going to go to SharePoint, but a lot of maybe my home drives are going to OneDrive. Maybe some of the corporate data sets are going to SharePoint. Brilliant. Let's start removing that data because I don't want to have to scope that into my migration planning and my cost modeling. Things like Active Directory. Okay, I've got 4 domain controllers. Well, what's stopping me going to Azure AD natively? Brilliant. Okay, let's ditch these domain controllers. I don't need them anymore. Let's descope them. Web, SQL, all of these components. Let's start stripping out these service-based delivery that we're going to look at replacing servers with services. Make the green box go, Liam. Yeah. Then we go down to some of the usage profiles. So the best way of saving money on Azure, regardless of what anyone says, is by not using it. If you turn it off, you stop paying for it. You turn the lights off when you leave a room, turn the resource off. Obviously, production, operational constraints, some of the services and configuration of services, once you power them down, bringing them back up could be problematic. You might have a 24/7 offering, but test and dev aren't around for 24/7. Developers don't like working. They might work funny hours, but they don't want to work 24 hours a day. When you're going through QA and testing, unless you've got a continuous deployment mechanism, you're not going to be testing every day, every hour of every day. So let's make sure we introduce automation. Let's make sure we identify intermittent workloads. We power things on, we power things off when they're needed. Let's introduce some scale. Maybe, I do have a 24/7 web presence, but I haven't got millions of users on all the time, unless I'm Amazon. Maybe it's during the day I have lots of people on there. I just need to keep that service available for out of hours if people are browsing or doing some extra work there. Let's scale that down and make sure I've got the minimal amount of resources required to service that application to my users. Let's introduce elasticity to my environment. But going through these 4 steps here will really give you a more accurate price of how much Azure costs on a day-to-day basis. We then step through some license manipulation from Microsoft. So if you've got software assurance on any license you buy from a Windows or SQL perspective, then you have an entitlement to run that in Azure. You shouldn't have to pay for that license again. You've already paid for it. It's not paying for it. It's not free. You've already paid for that software assurance. So we'll make sure that we capture things from a licensing statement and entitlement for a hub entitlement and discount that off some of the images as well. So I'm not paying for Windows twice. I'm not paying for SQL twice. Let's discount that off my VMs that reside within Azure. Then we'll model the migration. We don't like giving, yeah, sorry, a little green box, go on in, next one. We don't like giving reserved instancing. This isn't as bad as it used to be, actually. So reserved instances, I've seen people get into a big mess with this, and people lead with reserved instances. So the reason we don't do that up front is because we don't have an understanding of what static workloads are. You know, if you could tell me from an organization that this website has to be up 24 hours a day, this service has to be up 24 hours a day, okay, I'm going to get limited. Yeah, I'm going to get no cost savings from turning that on and off because I can't do it. At that point, we can say, okay, well, let's look at reserving that instance for a set amount of time. If we know that application is going to be around for the next year, 3 years, okay, let's maximize some of the cost savings we can make by committing to that instance. Maybe this is my finance application. I'm not moving that finance application for the next 3 years because it's embedded in my business process. It has to be available 24 hours a day. Okay, fantastic. I can mark that for a reserved instance and take 40, 50, 60% discount off that, because that's what I'm entitled to for that SKU of service that I'm using from Microsoft. So we don't like doing it up front until we know what elasticity we can enforce into the applications, what intermittent power states we can introduce, what software assurance entitlement we have. Then once we understand the static picture of the environment, we can then make reserved instance recommendations. Microsoft are getting a lot better with being able to trade them, and having a monthly commitment to some of them as well, or paying for them monthly anyway. Move quickly on to some of the other costs. So VM costs are one thing. So I've got a 3-tier application. You can see there from the diagram. My database costs me X, the server that it sits on costs me Y, the application is a D whatever it is, so it costs me this. The web server, maybe I've got scale sets, maybe it's just a single IIS instance. I can work out what that cost is. I can model that for time. I will use it 730 hours a month. Okay, that gives me an element of time. But behind these servers, there's 2 other hidden costs. But ultimately, we don't want to become hidden. We want to understand them properly. So we split them into operational costs and administrative and governance costs. So the operational costs are relative to the workload. So the more of the workload I have, the more operational costs are going to be incurred. So things like backup, I've got 3 servers in Azure. I need to back up 3 servers. So therefore my logs, my backup and retention policies will be in scale with what I've got. I've got 50 servers, 5,000 servers. I need to back them up. So therefore I incur more costs from backup or ASR or whatever business continuity product that I use for that. I'm collecting metrics, I'm collecting logs. Well, if I'm collecting logs from 5 machines, that's going to be very different to collecting logs from 5,000 machines. So they're relative to the amount of machines you've got, but they're always going to be present during the configuration of your Azure environment. Some of the other costs, the administrative and governance costs, also align themselves very nicely to landing zone elements as well. So these are static costs. These are costs that you're going to incur irrelevant to how many machines you have. So you could have 5 machines, you could have 50,000 machines, but you still need to enforce a level of security. If you work in a regulated industry, I need to make sure that I'm capturing logins. I need to make sure I'm capturing suspicious activity, out of hours activities. So I want to have security center there. So that cost is static. You have to pay for that service. Same with firewalls. I want to be able to control egress back to the internet. I want to be able to control URL filters, things like that. Well, okay, that's a static cost, because if you've got 3 users, you've got 5,000 users, you still need that service in place. The same with identity. If you want, irrelevant of how many machines you've got, it's just that static cost that you're going to have from having that environment up there. And that's what we try and do. We try and understand what they are, map that to some of the landing zone concepts to give you not just the VM run costs, but we look at the operational costs, and then we look at the administrative and governance costs that sit around that as well. So it gives you that better understanding of how much a VM costs for me to run in Azure. Everyone can go to the pricing calculator and type in virtual machine, select a VM from there and get you a cost. That's not an effective and transparent understanding of what the costs to run in Azure truly are.